That documentary that you're coming out with, what is that going to be about? Just your journey so far?
It's going to be about the circumnavigation through 2012, and that is the goal. And so we started that project in 2014, and our director right now is working for HBO, coming up with Marvel miniseries and working 70, 80 hours a week.
Oh.
He was seeking help from interns, and that dried up with the pandemic. And so everything's on hold right now. We'll see when it gets done. At this point, I don't have a timeline at all.
Okay.
I can't worry about these things. I need to let it go, let it be. And then I can carry on with my other projects, because if I dwell on how things don't get done yesterday, it gets very frustrating.
Yeah, that's true. And I'm sure you have a lot of exciting projects lined up. One of the questions I was most interested in asking you, just in learning about your story, and your circumnavigation, obviously, is, if I remember correctly, you were at sea alone for over 300 days.
Yeah, 312 days on the Pacific Ocean.
So what I was curious about is what that does psychologically while you're alone for that long. Are there any ramifications of that?
Well, I fared well. I recovered okay. But at the time, I did not feel good at all. After I launched from Bodega Bay on California shores, the sea state changed. It turned into a very strong La Nina that year, the season 2007-2008 season. When we have La Nina conditions on the Pacific Ocean, the equatorial winds blow stronger. The trade winds from the northeast and southeast blow stronger. And more of the storms and floods and such happen on the west side. Australia gets flooded, and we get more typhoons on the west side. That was the pattern, and each time I tried to cross the equator, I would get pushed back by the southeast trades. So I never crossed the equator until May of 2008, when a typhoon formed near Palau, about 400 nautical miles northwest of me, and changed the wind patterns and brought winds from the northwest. And with that, I was able to drop south toward Papua New Guinea shores. I got into the Bismarck Sea, and
That's awesome.
land was, an atoll was just about 10 miles to my east. I could see the trees, I could see the features, but I couldn't dare go to it because I didn't have the charts. I was supposed to go to Australia. I had missed Australia by 1,200 miles. And,
wow.
When I didn't go for shore and drop anchor, try to scratch the bottom at least, the winds took me back north. So on day 312, we sought help from Philippine fishermen who were fishing tuna on those waters. And they sent a small vessel to tow me to a larger vessel with cranes and such, and they took me to Philippines, to General Santos City, and then they took care of my boat during the typhoon season. And that typhoon, Typhoon Ramasun, that formed near Palau, turned into a Category 5 super typhoon and ran toward Japan, went north. That early in the season, it should not have gone north. That was an odd storm and odd behavior. It should have gone toward the Philippines early in the season. Anyway, the Philippine fishermen then took me back to that spot. Christmas Day, we left from General Santos City, and then they dropped me at the same spot January 15, so that I could continue south on the Bismarck Sea toward Papua New Guinea shores and continue my journey. So that's how that resolved itself.
Oh, wow. So you had a couple month hiatus is what it sounds like.
Yeah. With all the changes in the routing, and with the typhoon season getting in the way, trying to time the crossing across the Coral Sea, my journey got to be a good year and a half longer than it should have been. So I finished it in 5 years, 11 days. Could have been probably finished in 3.5 or so had I not been forced. Had I been able to reach Australia, it would have been much easier.
At least you're still finished, though. That's awesome.
Yeah, logistics
amazing,
became
honestly, when I was reading
huge
about it.
issue, and it was a godsend that the Philippine fishermen were willing to participate in the journey and become part of it and become part of the story. And even though the journey got longer, I thought that the whole thing was an enriching experience for me.
Yeah, definitely. And then when you're experiencing storms like that, obviously you probably weren't expecting those the whole time. Is it kind of relieving when you saw the atoll? Were you a little bit like, okay, there's land?
Depends. If it is downwind of me, it's very worrying. And because the winds would be pushing me toward what we call lee shores. There would be land on my lee side, downwind of me. And that's the nightmare of any mariner. And with an underpowered vessel like mine, 1/4 horsepower, options are very limited. So we try to not get into those traps as ocean rowers, for example.
Okay. And I know that you went back across the Pacific earlier this year.
Yes.
And we're planning on summiting Everest, I want to say in April. So when is that planned for now?
Well, the Everest was originally planned for post-monsoon. Could have been in September or so, depending, maybe October. But it's not going to happen. It's not common to climb Everest in post-monsoon season, typically. More of the expeditions leave for pre-monsoon climbs. Regardless, I don't have sponsorship for Everest, and the lead time for an Everest climb probably is a year, maybe longer. One has to gather the gear, test it, be ready, apply for permits, get the permits, and participate in one of the organized climbs. Probably it's just too much work to organize my own expedition on this. So I need to coordinate with other climbs, probably organized climbs like Mount Madness or Summit Climb. They don't want to rush this. Let me just briefly say it.
No, definitely.
Concisely. I don't want to rush it. I don't want to take chances. I could probably go to Kathmandu and gather used gear and rush it and hop on any expedition that'll take me and get up. But what happened is I wanted to go to Hong Kong on my crossing. This Everest climb is part of my Six Summits project. During my circumnavigation, 2007 to 2012, I climbed Kosciuszko and Kilimanjaro in Australia and Africa, respectively. In 2003, I had bicycled up to Alaska and walked the length of the Kahilna Glacier to reach the summit of Mount McKinley. And what remained were Everest, Elbrus, and Aconcagua on that 6-summit list. This I am doing in memory of Göran Korop, who had bicycled from Sweden to Nepal in 1996, towing his climbing gear behind him on a trailer. And he was famous for that. He had encouraged me to get started on my circumnavigation, and I lost him while rock climbing together. So on the way back from his funeral, November of 2002, I drew the world map on a piece of paper, marked the highest summits on each continent, and decided that I was going to climb these as in memory of Göran. The financial crisis of 2008-2010 made it very difficult to find sponsors, which has been the bane of my existence from the get-go anyway. So I decided to skip Everest and Elbrus and reached straight for Africa to climb Kilimanjaro and ran for the summit. The finish of the circumnavigation, skipped Aconcagua as well. The longer the boat was out there in storage, being transported, stored, and it kept in a container, it just added up on the costs. I had to keep running to finish it and then deal with the rest later. When the pandemic hit, I reflected on my experience with Yaran. I had been planning to climb or do the circumnavigation since 1997, ever since I traced my finger across a map hanging on the wall in our office back in Ireland. But I didn't act on it. I didn't get started. I didn't commit until the accident happened. And Yaran died on my delay. So when the pandemic hit, I said, what am I waiting for? I have 3 more summits to go to, and I'm not going to wait for a tragedy to hit again to get started. So now, this time, I'm going to leave by choice. So I decided, okay, I'm going to aim for Everest. Then, of course, the pandemic, its related visa difficulties and everything else added more color to the story. I left from Crescent City June of 2021, and then 80 days later, I reached Hawaii. A month later, after trying to get visas and failing for China, I left without a visa to China, and the goal was to reach Hong Kong so I could bicycle from there to Everest. In January, after I left from Hawaii, Hong Kong had a big spread of Omicron variant, and they shut down. They started requiring 3 weeks of quarantine for everyone arriving at Hong Kong. And they were not going to allow me to spend those 3 weeks at anchor on my boat. And it's the process in maritime world that arriving at any port, one would display a yellow flag. Yellow in the flag alphabet stands for letter Q, stands for quarantine. And the yellow flag would stay up until the quarantine and customs requirements are met on any vessel coming from foreign waters. And once those procedures are completed, then one would bring down the yellow flag and hoist the courtesy flag for that country, host country. So that's the process ever since the days of yellow fever. And the Hong Kong government was not going to have any of it. They were going to put me in a hotel. And I thought about it on the ocean. In January, I said, well, I'm going to go there. They're going to tie up my boat somewhere where it's going to remain unattended for 3 weeks. And they're going to put me in a car. Could be a police car, it could be a taxi, I don't know. They're going to give a guard to me. They're going to have a driver in that. They're going to breathe on me. I'll be taken to a hotel. The front desk people will breathe on me. And then they will make me walk the hallways through which all these hapless airline passengers had passed, coming from all over the world, bringing variants of all sorts into this petri dish. And then they were going to lock me up for 3 weeks in this one hotel room. And then we were going to wait until 3 weeks later to see if they managed to infect me from my boat to my room. And I said, nah, that's not an experiment I want to undertake. So I rejected that. The Seas wanted to take me to Guam anyway. And I went to Guam. 139 days after having left Hawaii, I was at Guam. February 12th, I arrived there, and February 14th was Valentine's Day. My wife came. We had a week there together.
That's awesome, though.
and landed at Philippines. So the goal is to go to Nepal or pass near it, but I'm not going to attempt it because I had difficulty finding sponsorships. If I can get visas for all the countries along the way, I will bicycle from Vietnam to Portugal. I should get to Portugal in early October or so. The rowboat needs to be transported to Portugal, southwestern Portugal, by container, and I will relaunch from there sometime in October, maybe late October or so, toward British Guyana. And once there, I will work my way south to Aconcagua, which is between Mendoza and Santiago on the Argentinian side in the Andes. And then once I climb that, and I'll work my way back up to Crescent City. And that's where I will say, okay, I'm done for now. Let's see if I can find my way to Elbrus and Everest later. Elbrus probably is going to be risky. I don't know how it will all play out by the time that I am passing by, Western Iran and Azerbaijan, that area.
Yeah.
I don't know if it would be safe. We all are seeing what's going on with Griner being held hostage, essentially.
Yeah.
I don't want to deal with a grumpy border guard or a, zealous cop on the road or any Yahoo that may pick a fight with me or something. And the next thing you know, I'm stuck in a jail. I don't want to take that chance.
Oh yeah, that'd be especially in one of those.
Wars tend to play with people's psyche. You don't know how it's going to go. I have no doubt that I would find the right people and have the hospitality wherever I go. The journey provides it's a magical experience. Everybody that I needed showed up on my path, but it takes only one to ruin my day. I don't think it should be a risk that I should take going to Elbrus at this time.
Yeah, with all those countries over there too. And like you said, with the war going on in Russia and everything that's happening over there, that doesn't seem like it'd be the best option right now. So with all that going on, do you think you have somewhat of a timeline for when you'll finish the Six Summit project, or are you just kind of playing it by ear?
I have to plan this one day at a time. So if everything goes according to plan and I don't have any hiccups or barriers due to visa issues or pandemic, how it spreads and whatever measures countries may take, I should be launching from Philippines first week of February probably and reach Vietnam by the end of February. It should take about 3 weeks. The distance is about 600 miles. Then I would get to Portugal in October, launch by the end of October or so, to Guyana. By February or so of 2024, I should be in Guyana. Climbing Aconcagua has to be timed with the seasons. If I continue on south to Aconcagua, that's going to be pretty much their winter. May require waiting for the season to be right for Aconcagua. I don't know at this time. Then sometime in early 2025, probably I will finish back at Crescent City, where I had started this second circumnavigation.
Yeah.
And then we'll see what happens with Elbrus and Everest later. I may decide at that time that, I've had enough fun. Let's hang up the oars because, a lot of this is driven by donations and adding a whole lot of funding from our retirement funds with my wife. At some point, this becomes irresponsible on the financial side on my part.
Yeah.
So I need to start playing locally, finding challenges near the house, hang out.
Are you still?
Yeah.
Are you still in like the Seattle area?
We live in Gig Harbor, state of Washington now.
Okay.
I moved to Seattle area in 1999. Nancy joined me in 2000, 2001. Onward, we've been living together. We've been married since 2003. And we lived in that area since that time. So it's been 20 years, Nancy and I, living in the Pacific Northwest. Gig Harbor is across the Puget Sound from Seattle by Vashon Island, northwest of Tacoma, if anybody wonders. It's the gateway to the Olympic Peninsula. So if we want to take advantage of nature, we have access to water and the mountains and hiking trails. And Rainier is just to the east of us. We can go there. And yeah, it offers a lot of...
I know I used to live in Camas. Do you know where that is?
Yes.
Okay. So I read that you would climb in the gorge a little bit.
Yes.
And that's where the accident with your friend happened.
Yes.
I used to venture in there whenever I could, and I could definitely see all the rock climbing. You could do a bunch of kayaking. Really, there's a ton of activities that you could do out there too.
Mm-hmm.
So another question I was curious about is when you're on the water for your circumnavigation, traveling across the oceans. I've always been curious about this. In any situation, what do you do to store food, water? What does that look like? Do you have to store all that ahead of time?
I do store food on the boat for the duration and more. Right now I have enough food on the boat to take me across the South China Sea and probably all the way to Guyana. All the time that I will be spending on the boat, I have enough food. So the boat is designed for 2 people. I loaded up quite a bit, especially fuel becomes an issue. I use gas canisters to boil water using a handheld jet boil device. And then freeze-dried foods receive that boiled water. Once I zip it, let it sit for a while, it becomes edible. If I want to, I can add some couscous or instant rice or potato flakes into it to add volume and calories to my diet. So anything powdered at this time and freeze-dried is the main staple out there. I can have nuts and raisins and other goods that I want. A lot of protein bars or powdered rehydration drinks. All of those are powerful, of course. I don't store water other than what's required for ballast. And I, of course, make that potable water. And that becomes my emergency rations if my desalination device fails. So I can make water from the sea using my desalination device. I have an electric powered one that has been fairly reliable, except when air got into the system. We solved that problem on my last crossing. And so I didn't have to pull out the hand pumped one. In an emergency, I can use the 100 liters, 25 gallons of ballast water that I have. And each time I use another jug, I have to replace it with seawater and then put it back down so that the weight distribution remains the same. The boat needs to stay upright. If I disturb that balance, I risk inverting the boat with a big wave and it wouldn't right itself. So the ballast is important in that sense. So making water from the sea is the way to go. Because I make about 2 gallons of water every day on a regular basis. That's pretty much the minimum. Because I use that water to drink. I use that water to reconstitute my freeze-dried foods and also to rinse my skin and my clothes. Salt is a major problem out there. It dries the skin and it really desiccates the skin, really, because splashes happen and then it dries, leaves behind a film of salt. Imagine getting splashed all the time and having this coat of salt on the skin. And salt on live tissue is not a good thing. It draws the moisture out of it. So exposure to salt, to sun, to wind, those become the day-to-day challenges that one has to address every day. And I have to last. The skin breaks, can get infected. It gets raw, and chafing is a problem because I have repetitive motion back and forth, underarms, under my seat. Bottom has to be pristine, clean. So there's a lot of rinsing going on, diluting that, and changing underwear, or often I roll without underwear so that it's easier to clean and rinse. And the seat itself has to have a cover. Often my underwear is under me rather than on me. So I can quickly rinse it yet again and then put it down fresh. Just imagine you're sitting on that back and forth all day. Anything that is not clean down there will get spread further, and then the hair follicles get irritated in the process, and then they can get infected easily. A lot of bacteria down there, they can multiply, and if it's irritated, these hair follicles can get infected, and then they become big welts, or worst case scenario, turn into boils, and you get what we call pizza butt. Looks like pepperoni down there, and it'll spread, colorful. Don't want to have that because I am the engine, right? If I have problems down there, then I can't row, and that becomes a huge issue. So maintenance is a big deal, and cleanliness.
Okay.
You'd be surprised how baby diaper cream works wonders. So just take a pot.
Does it really?
Yeah, take a big helping of that with you on the crossing. Leave with that in hand and apply that fairly regularly as part of the maintenance.
Okay. Do you usually, obviously you just talked about all the different health things that can go sideways. You usually seek medical attention when you get to your destination just to make sure everything's functioning normally?
Typically, no, unless I definitely need help. I leave on the ocean or even on the land phases. I have with me what we call a personal medical kit, PMK, offered by my sponsor, World Clinic. World Clinic, they provide remote medical services to those that don't have immediate access to facilities or doctors. So I carry prescription strength medications with me, in addition to first aid and other supplies that I take on top of it over the counter. And if anything goes wrong and it's something that I can't address, I have questions about, I can call a number that they give me, and they will then dispatch me to a specialist, a doctor, who would be able to answer my questions. This is a 24/7 service, so I can be anywhere around the world, reach them by satellite phone or by email or messaging, and then they would then offer a solution, tell me which medication to take, and if things go sideways, as you say, and I have to be evacuated depending on the situation, then they would remain as my primary care service while on a vessel that would pick me up and then deliver me to shore. And they would remain so until I reach proper medical facilities. So they are my emergency stopgap medical help. And that's a huge relief. Helps Nancy sleep better at night when I'm gone.
Yeah, I bet. Um, has that, like, what's the worst situation you've gotten into? Have you had to get evacuated yet or no?
Um, no, not for medical reasons.
Okay.
When that Typhoon Ramasun happened in May of 2008, for example, we sought help from the Philippine fishermen, and that was a proper orderly evacuation. It was a strategic retreat and then carried on from where I had been picked up later. So other than that, there was no evacuation. We did have concerns when I was rowing from Crescent City to Hawaii. I left in June, and in August, leading to my landing at Waikiki, September 10th, I think it was, or 11th of 2021, I had these hurricanes forming south of Baja and south of Mexico, and they would power up on warm waters and then run northwest or west-northwest, depending. And they would get to 125 west longitude. That's where they would meet colder waters of California current coming from the north and power down. Some of them jumped over that and continued west as remnant lows, as a weaker low pressure system. So we had to keep an eye on those and try to navigate this. So I had to stay at 25 north latitude for a good long while, longer than I would have liked to. I couldn't just aim for Hawaii, so I had to stay north and then come down in a hurry toward Oahu. There was this chance that I would have passed north of Oahu and keep going nonstop. All of these had to be monitored. Each of these hurricanes, Hurricane Hilda, was it? Or Linda? I'm trying to remember now. Anyway, that one became a problem for us. It formed south of Baja, and it was going to run northwest and pass northeast of me. With that early forecast, I started running southwest to put distance before it came anywhere near me. And that hurricane stalled, and it just sat there. Before it got to colder waters, it just sat there and powered up, sitting over warmer waters, and became an annular hurricane, annular cyclone, which means that it's eye inside of an eye. So it had a wall inside the outer wall. It was one of those giant monsters. And then it decided it was going to run west-northwest. So all of a sudden I was on its track because I had already run southwest. So we stalled. I put the power anchor on and just stopped any further southerly progress because I was in its path. And we monitored it. For a while, it was going to come right at me, and we were expecting 40-knot winds at my location by the time it would reach my spot. And so Coast Guard was alerted in Honolulu. We kept monitoring what are the nearest vessels, how soon could they get to me. So always there was a vessel within a day or two of arrival to my location. And so my shore team was coordinating constantly, and they were monitoring my position and the storm's position. Eventually the storm passed south of me, and then once it passed, I could turn southwest and dash for Oahu. So yeah, that's an ongoing, everyday process. I have immediate exchanges with my weather router friend, Jason Christensen, and he and I text more often than I text with my wife. And I told this to Nancy in Jason's presence, and we had a good laugh about that. But that's life. Knowing what's out there lurking gives me enough advance notice that I can prepare the boat and be ready, clear the deck, be shipshape, be ready to weather the storm if any is coming. Of course, we try to design my crossings so that I am not out there during the storm season or in the path of storms. I wanted to go to Hong Kong nonstop. For that reason, I delayed my departure so that I could be arriving the other side in early April before the typhoon season really kicked in. And for that reason, I launched a bit later than I should have, which then exposed me to hurricanes on the east side. The Pacific is so large, so wide, that if I avoid storms at one end, I get caught on the other end. And so if one stops, then you can time the seasons better. One of the reasons that I stopped at Hawaii was to, of course, try to get the visa to China, which never happened. Had I missed Hong Kong, which was going to give me visa on arrival, I would have had to land on either side, which is China. And I thought that I could pass north of Philippines in early March, which would have given me the option to run for Vietnam. But observing that I was moving slower than I had intended west of Hawaii, it was clear that I was going to pass north of Philippines in late March, possibly early April, with all the weather systems that was passing north of me and hindering me. And I had to spend a lot of time on para anchor trying to control my latitude. The monsoons would have shifted, the currents would have shifted, it would have taken me north toward Taiwan. The Kuroshio current would have grabbed me, taken me east side of Taiwan, and I would have had to bail toward either Japan or South Korea. It would have been an out-of-control expedition, basically. That's why it became essential that I divert to Guam and then to Philippines, just keep this thing under control.
Okay.
It's always weighing options, always trying to make sure that things stay in control. Like, as much as I am taking risks out there, it's never a gamble. It's always calculated risks, trying to make sure that the ocean provides what I need to get to a certain destination. Things stay under control as much as possible. And that's what makes it an adventure. Things are never 100% in control. It makes me work to earn the crossing. I am granted passage. So there's never this conquering the ocean business. It's just the wrong mindset. And I have to work with what I have and survive it to tell the story.
Yeah. Okay. And talking about your last trip across the Pacific, you were working with Ocean Recovery Alliance. Is that
Yes.
right? Okay.
My goal on this crossing, which is in line with our nonprofit goals, nonprofit around and over is a 501c3 that I established back in 2003 before I started my circumnavigation. The goal was to educate and inspire children, especially children, based on stories from human-powered journeys. So when the opportunity came that I could partner with Ocean Recovery Alliance and become an ocean ambassador for them, it lined up with my educational mission. So our goal with Ocean Recovery Alliance was to highlight and raise awareness about plastic pollution in the ocean. It's a big problem. And whenever I connected with classrooms, partnering with Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants. That's the name of the organization. They're affiliated with the National Geographic educational broadcasts, and they gather classrooms, English-speaking classrooms. On one occasion, we had a classroom from India, even. And these mainly North America, Canadian and American schools sign up, and then they participate in these YouTube Live or Facebook Live and other venues that's offered, and then they can participate, they can ask their questions, and they would connect with adventurers, explorers like myself, or scientists on the Antarctic bases like McMurdo, or astronauts on the space station. So all these interesting characters that are out there in the world doing something out of the ordinary, they would be connected to these classrooms through this service. It was a wonderful thing that we could actually engage the youth and tell them about what I was doing, and also try to alert them to the problem of plastic pollution in our oceans. So it was a wonderful partnership. It's still ongoing with Ocean Recovery Alliance. I'm an ocean ambassador for them, and we're going to continue this partnership into the future. They put together an educational stream of content based on what I was doing and giving, in addition to my blog on my website, they were giving classrooms a wider explanatory introduction to what I was doing. So talking about ocean rowing, what it took, and tell about the boats and logistics and other details, the flora and the fauna and what I was encountering, and embellish on that using resources that I didn't have on board. While I told my story on a day-to-day basis, they would give additional information on that. So it was an enriching delivery, I think, for everyone involved. So I'm grateful for that.
Yeah. So speaking about that, you have obviously, it's been really important to you to kind of show the youth around the world the importance of protecting our oceans. But you've also received a lot of medals and accolades, awards, double-digit world records. So how is that compared? What would you say has been more intrinsically meaningful to you, helping the youth, or those being recognized for the awards that you've received?
Well, Guinness World Records has been wonderful, along with Ocean Rowing Society. That is an adjudicator for them. When I completed my circumnavigation in 2012, I had established 15 Guinness World Records. So they were diligent to be the referees for that, and then submit it to Guinness World Records. And Guinness has been keeping tabs on what I do. I think these are all meaningful, obviously, getting some recognition for what's been done, for keeping track of this for sake of history is a good thing. When I started my circumnavigation, I didn't know if I could finish it. But, just getting started was difficult, but by the time I did finish it, I had become the person who could set 15 Guinness World Records and establish historic firsts. So it was a growing experience for me. That's one of the lessons that I share with children, especially. I say, hey, don't set your goals. Don't lower your standards. Don't clip your own wings. Have big goals, big dreams. Pursue them. If you have doubts about whether or not you can succeed, just know that you tomorrow will be a more experienced and more skillful and better connected person who can get these things done. Just grow into that person. It's a growth process. So adults even should take that to heart, because often we say, well, that's not realistic. I'm not going to do that. I'll just keep doing what I know how to do, versus taking on the challenge and growing up to be the person who can get it done. When I left on this last crossing, within a month of having left Crescent City, I took over the record for career total days at sea for an ocean rower. The record was 937 days. It was held by Peter Bird, a British pioneer of our sport, ocean rowing, who was lost at sea trying to row from Vladivostok east across the North Pacific to California. And I've been carrying his logo on my rowboat ever since 2007. And it was meaningful to take over that record. Mine was just short of that. And soon after I left, I had taken that over. And then beyond Hawaii, I also took over the number of miles rowed as a career total of all ocean rowings I had done until then for a solo.
How many miles was that?
So right now, I have about 27,000 nautical miles straight line and great circle distance between destinations that I have covered. That's how Ocean Rowing Society keeps track of records. So they take 2 points, start, finish, and calculate the great circle distance between them. If we take into account all the meandering track that my rowboat drew on these crossings, it's over 30,000 for sure. The days total now stands at 1,168 days overall, and just over 1,100 days solo. So that's a lot of time on the water that I had spent, and these are records. When I was approaching Philippines, every day I would wake up with 3 new world records each day. The total miles rowed solo and the total and solo days at sea. Each time it would advance. So when I get back on the South China Sea, I will advance those records and just keep going until it's ready. I am ready to hang up my oars, I guess.
Yeah, and that, I'm assuming you're just kind of going to do that whenever feels best to do so.
I think finances will drive that decision. I would have to, I think, at some point say enough already and stop, take stock, and say it's time to play closer to home and be happy and be satisfied. And I don't need to do these big expeditions. Small is beautiful. That way I'd be closer to home, to Nancy. And we have a little dog, black dog, with the chin turning white now, getting old. He's probably got another 3 years in him. So I'd be around for that. These things are important, small details, but that's what add meaning to life anyways.
Okay. So then obviously we've talked a lot about you being on the water. I was curious when you're on land, because you, for the circumnavigation, had to go over land a lot too. Do you kind of take your time and soak up the surroundings, or do you kind of just stay focused on accomplishing the circumnavigation and kind of just go for speed?
A bit of both. Depends.
Okay.
I wouldn't rush across to the other side of a continent unless I have to time my departure with seasons. So if I have that kind of a weather window that I want to make sure to meet, then yeah, I would be hurrying. But otherwise, a lot of times the weather windows also tell me that, hey, I got another 6 months to kill. And so on that, I have the option, I can get across and then fly home and do fundraising, deal with logistics, spend time home, do presentations, engage schools, companies, whatever I have to do, and then return and continue the journey. As long as I continue from where I stopped, I don't have an issue with that. Because sometimes visas become an issue. If I stay too long in any one country, I may have to extend my visa or go out, renew visa, come back in. These things are to be dealt with on a case-by-case basis. But typically, I don't rush it unless I have, as I said, a weather window to meet, and then before it's too late, I have to be off the rock, you know?
Yeah, so you'll speed it up a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we'll start to wind down. I just want to ask 2 more questions, and I'll ask them at the same time. You kind of answered them earlier to an extent when you said that you want to make sure that both young people and adults know that just to pursue whatever they desire, without having any, even if you do have doubts, making sure you still pursue it, because you never know what'll come from it. You don't know if you'll be successful until after you've tried it, like you were saying. But do you have any other wisdom or advice for people who are following in your footsteps, but also just everybody in general, which is kind of what you said earlier relates to?
Well, as I said, don't clip your own wings. We can be our own worst enemy. Self-doubt, uncertainty, and fear keep us back from taking action. And often we're comfortable with what we know and decide not to step outside of that comfort zone. But growth doesn't happen until we step outside that comfort zone. So our domain, our horizon widens when we do step outside that comfort zone. So growth does not happen without discomfort. We need to accept that, embrace it, and carry on. Dreams don't become reality unless one is surrounded by good people. As much as I do these expeditions alone, and I'm alone on the water, I am not lonely. I mean, I am by myself in execution, but I am surrounded by people who care and who provide me information and who provide me moral support. And also, we should go back to Joseph Campbell, where he says, if you pursue in the hero's journey, if you pursue your bliss, you will find that there will be hands ahead of you opening doors you didn't know existed. These invisible hands will make it possible. It's talking more in spiritual sense there than the hero's journey, but for me, it was the journey that provided at all times. It's the magic of the journey that everybody that I needed, doesn't matter where or which country, they showed up on my path. When I needed logistical help, and I needed information, when I needed a warm roof over my head, when vulnerable, I found the help I needed. So vulnerability engenders kindness. One has to trust that, know that help will appear. Humanity is wonderful. So having said that, I always have to also practice horse sense. Horses run first, then look. Don't be a victim. Don't be silly about things. You have to trust to a certain point, but listen to your gut. Don't get into situations that could be troublesome. Just like as a mariner, I try to avoid lee shores. I don't get into those situations where I would be exposed by the weather pushing me toward land. It's a similar thing on land itself, that I should not be setting camp within sight of the road, for example. It doesn't matter where I am, North America or Australia or Africa. I need to be out of sight and not advertise to everyone that I am there, so that I can have a good sleep without worry, and then carry on with the journey the next morning. I mean, these things are probably the kinds of lessons that one can take to heart. Surround yourself with good people. Don't clip your own wings. Be ready to face discomfort and grow to meet the challenge. Often the challenges that we face are because of the actions we have taken. These are by choice. We choose to pursue our paths. If we're lucky, we create that choice. And then when we come to these forks in the road, we have to make the right choice. Choosing the easy path path of least resistance may get us to the other side quicker, perhaps, but it may not lead to as much growth. It's a matter of choice, right? depends on what you want to do and the kind of growth that you want to have. Yeah, sometimes path of least resistance is the way to go. Sometimes facing that challenge is a good thing, and we should embrace it and surround ourselves with good people to see us through that challenge and grow the team as you go. That's leadership, because as we set these goals, we have a long-term goal. We break that down into smaller chunks, manageable, achievable goals. And as we reach these goals, we taste success. As we taste success, we feel successful, we act successful, and then people wonder why we act so successful, even if we're not done with the big goal yet. And then they want to learn the secret, perhaps, and you become a leader in your own domain and surround yourself with those who want to know, those who want to support, and that circle of friends expands, and it's an ongoing journey. It's a story of our lives, and it doesn't matter in real life as well, in our careers, in our family, in our neighborhood, in our communities. It's always the same. If you get stuff done and you look successful and you appear to know what you're doing, then people will come for advice and seek that leadership, and then you can help them find the path. And as a team, you can get more done, and all of a sudden you're part of a bigger project and you're making a difference. And what's our legacy going to be? That's the big question.
Yeah, well, you've definitely inspired me, and I'm sure a lot of other people with what you've accomplished and how much you've done. But once again, I just want to thank you very much for taking the time to come on, sharing your story, and then, just helping me understand kind of more about you and your experiences. It definitely means a lot that you were willing to do that.
Thank you. And we'll share with the audience our website and social media accounts and such, and they can do their own research.
Awesome. And I'll definitely link those as well.
Great. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Have a good day.
Drew. You too.